Oh hey, it's Wes. And today the day has finally come, the successor to the V1. We're gonna go in depth, we're gonna tear it apart, we're gonna break it down, and see if this is truly a worthy successor to what has been one of the most popular flashes ever made. Starting with the build quality. Let's take these apart and see how they compare. Original V1, the only real issue was the hot shoe breaking, but it has since been upgraded to a metal hot shoe. Even beyond that, if we take apart the bottom sections of both these flashes, we'll find that the entire hot shoe assembly has been altered, it's been simplified. We have some longer screws in use here. Longer, will that be sturdier? I can't say right now. If I can get a replacement hot shoe for this, I will try breaking them to see which one is actually stronger. And surprisingly though, even though they're different shapes, they are actually swappable. You can take this new foot off of the V1 Pro and install it and get it working on the original V1. Very interesting. The biggest difference, however, is up in the head section, where Godox made some improvements to thermals. But what are those improvements? Well, number one, there's a glass panel at the top. So instead of 2 layers, there are now 3, and you can see that the diffusion layer also has a pinkish hue to it to counteract that greenish hue that the original V1 had. So that glass panel helps diffuse and absorb and deflect the heat coming off of the flash element to prevent the top layer diffusion panel from melting, because that is made of plastic. Interestingly enough, the heat sink in the front, however, is smaller. That surprised me a little bit. Perhaps it's a cut down on weight, because the V1 Pro is heavier. But another interesting alteration they made is they've doubled the number of induction coils in the flash head, which is incredibly uncommon. The inductor is often a source of heat, and I don't know if the inductors had been blowing in the past. In the past, it's a voltage regulator that I have blown in other flashes, not this one, but they've doubled the inductors, and that has a surprising, and I assume, intentional effect, but they didn't talk about this in any of the marketing. We're going to talk about this a little bit later. That second inductor coil has given us a massive benefit. We'll flip around to the back here. One thing that everyone wanted Godox to improve was this wheel on the back. Original wheel, the buttons are a little too easy to press. The center button, not a lot of tactility. Well, finally, Godox doubled down and put some attention on this, and they made it worse. In Rob Hall's original video with the prototype, he said that it was only a prototype issue that this center button was not fantastic, but there is almost no tactility whatsoever here. There's just the slightest little click, whereas the original actually had a bit of a click. And the entire center section is the button, whereas on the original it's just a button in the middle. We'll talk about that more in usability, but this has not improved. There is no weather sealing. There are flashes in existence that have weather sealing. That is a half a point gone there. I have had no issues with the entire flash body itself in the past. I did manage to crack my shoe eventually. I'm going to give this a 9 out of 10 because I can see that they tried to make the foot stronger, didn't improve the button, and it's not weather sealed. 9 out of 10. Moving on to the feature set, and when the V1 originally came out, it was so amazingly full featured. But since then, things have changed a lot. A lot of flashes and devices now have these beautiful OLED or LCD touchscreens that allow you to do a variety of more complex tasks. Even Godox has such a thing. Why isn't this interface in here? Our price went up, but instead, we have almost the exact same screen as before. The contrast does seem to be better on the new screen, so that's cool, but it's still a very old design. I would love to see an updated user interface, which they obviously have the capability of doing. Another new feature is this. You have the sub-flash you can attach to the front here. Now, I don't usually use a front-facing flash, and so I had to take this to a dance to try out the sub-flash and see how that performed. If you're wondering what the power output of the sub-flash is, it is approximately 1/16th power on the main flash itself, so that would compare there. And the focal length is around 28 to 35 millimeters. However, the spread pattern of this flash is a little bit weird. It's kind of normal for a teeny little cheap flash like this, but compared to the beautiful soft spread pattern, of course, of the V1 and V1 Pro, it becomes much more obvious. If it was a sub-flash on this, the V860 Mark III, it would be much less obvious because this has that weird square pattern on the front. And presumably, hopefully, there will be maybe a front-facing LED attachment, maybe a focus projector. I wouldn't bet on it because mirrorless camera manufacturers have kind of given up on the whole focus projector tech and just don't support it well in the camera itself. And the biggest feature for this is the greatly improved overheating performance. This thing goes at least twice as long at the same power outputs, and especially in high-speed sync, there's much better performance. They did a lot to retool and make sure that this was more thermally rugged than the original. One feature that this lacks due to its round head design, it does not have a flip-out diffuser or a bounce card built in. You can get those, but they cost extra and they magnetically attach to the front, and they might fall off. We roll around to the side here. We see another big update. There is USB-C port on the side of the battery. You can charge that in or out of the flash. Unfortunately, the battery still charges at the exact same pace as before, which is quite slow. So this is just a 5-volt USB charge. I would love if they had updated that just a little bit faster. It was already fairly convenient to USB charge your battery using just the tiny little charger that came with it. Another added feature, we have the TTL manual switch on the side. Not something I get much use of myself, because I generally shoot in manual. They also updated the LED on the front here, and not just a little bit. And we're going to take a look closer at the color quality of the LED when we get to light quality section, but it is significantly better. There is a built-in channel scanner for when you're shooting wirelessly, which is a great feature to have and something that people don't use as much as they should. I was hoping that the magnetic attachment would be slightly improved. It's still weaker than I would like on my last photo shoot with this flash. Barn doors fell off, had to go back into the woods to find them again. But it's the exact same metal ring as on the old one, so it's no stronger. One of the main features of this is compatibility with the entire Godox X lineup, which is just massive. So many triggers and flashes and devices to choose from. It's so easy to fill out your whole system that way with just the exact thing that you need. They also added, or should I say added back, the connector for an external power pack, which I don't have on hand. And another one of the big features is you have a very smooth diffusion front layer on this. It doesn't create a weird pattern like the sub-flash does. One of the big features, but one that the original has, is that you can control multiple groups of flashes with this flash. I don't want to go into big detail on that because it's nothing new to these Godox flashes, and there are tons of tutorials on that already. If you're using this function and the sub-flash, well, you have this screen and then you have to navigate back to a previous screen to adjust the sub-flash and then back to your transmitter screen. It'd be nice if they had sorted that out, but unfortunately the user interface has just not really changed at all from the previous model. Again, there's that disappointment. We're going to be talking about that more later on in usability. That is a feature that, for the price increase, really should have been seen. Although this is an incredibly full-featured flash, I'm going to give that a 9 out of 10. It doesn't completely dominate here. Usability. It is great to not have to worry so much about your flash overheating and thermal throttling. It will happen eventually, but it takes a lot longer now. This is a tough one. It is a familiar design. It is easy for me to get into, but there is a bit of a steep learning curve for beginners or people who just haven't operated a flash before. Some of the symbols and shortcuts and abbreviations can be a little bit obtuse, and now there are several flashes in the market that do this better, from Profoto, from Westcott, from Newer. You have beautiful touchscreens on the back with intuitive user interfaces that make things easier to do. Instead, we have an even worse control wheel that's almost impossible to not click other options while you're rotating it. Almost no tactility. What is going on, Godox? And the weirdest part is, if you take this thing apart, the daughter board that this control wheel is mounted to is entirely new. This is an entirely new component. And it's still worse. They replaced it with something new and even worse. Why? They really missed the boat on making it easier and more accessible and quicker and more intuitive to use. So I have to give this a 7 out of 10 for usability. It's familiar, but behind the times at this point. Light quality. One might argue that this is the most important. We're going to do a consistency test where we compare this to the original V1. Took about 23 shots to check the consistency of the white balance, the tint, and the exposure. So on the new V1 Pro, we have an average deviation of 37.92 for Kelvin, average deviation of tint of 0.29, and an exposure deviation of 1.07%. Whereas on the original V1, we have 33 average deviation for white balance, 0.63 for tint, so that's twice as deviant on tint, and 0.58 for exposure. So this one actually has a lower exposure deviation when tested at 1/4 power than the new one. It's just the tint that is a lot more stable on the Pro. And we also tested the sub-flash, which interestingly enough came out very, very close, well within a margin of error, to the consistency of the Pro. I assume that's just because it's getting the power from the same source. However, the white balance of this flash has gotten significantly cooler. And the weird thing is, this does not have a white balance that matches. So completely different color quality coming off the sub-flash. I feel like they could have done a little more work on that. Now let's look at the light quality of the LED on here. Very interesting. When we measure the original V1 LED, we see a CRI of 85 and an R9 of 19.7. Just horrible for skin tones. Whereas the new Pro, the CRI is 97.7 with an R9 of 84.2. Not fantastic, but it's still there. There are still some skin tones. If we go further into the light quality, the white balance of the new Pro is 2990, whereas the original one is 3339, which means that the flash got cooler and the LED got warmer. So now we have a difference of like 3700K between the flash and the LED, which is kind of wild. I don't know why they did that specifically. Is it a cost-saving thing? Do they specifically want the LED to be that much warmer than the flash? I don't know what's going on there. And for a little bit more light quality, we're gonna take this outside and really give it the business. This is at 1/2 power or 1/1 power for almost the whole time. The recycle time still isn't like what you would get on an 8300, 8400, 8600 Pro, but it still does great, and even after firing a lot and missing a few shots because I'm pushing the button too fast, it's not overheating, it's not throttling. I even went into high-speed sync for a lot of this. The flash lasted, unfortunately the umbrella did not. That is my old Westcott umbrella, and it broke when it hit the ground, finally. That umbrella has fallen many times already though, so it's had a good life. Pour one out for my 7-foot umbrella. If you want to see more and higher resolution image samples, there's a link down in the description below. But finally, and we're getting back to that second inductor coil in here, the greatest improvement to me is in high-speed sync performance. If you leave your electronic first curtain shutter on, you will see banding with high-speed sync with almost any flash, except, at least with my model and my testing with my camera A7 IV, the V1 Pro, there is no electronic first curtain shutter banding. That second inductor coil is drawing out those high-speed sync pulses and filling in those gaps much better, and from all the way from 1/500 to 1/8000, It is smooth sailing. Shocked. I am shocked. 8600 Pro doesn't do that. There is no other flash in the Godox lineup that does that. No other flash that I know of that smooths that out like that. I don't know why that didn't appear in the marketing material at all. That is an amazing improvement. Good job, Godox. So for light quality, we've got some weird eccentricities going on here, but overall, everything is improved, except for that cooler color temp that's weird. It's an 8 out of 10. Value. This is where things get very tricky. So the original V1 is $260. Almost everywhere it's marked down to $200 right now. The new V1 Pro is $330. That is MSRP-wise 25% more. And that's a lot for a flash, especially in today's current market where things are moving forward pretty quickly. So let's see how it compares to the rest of the market. There is, of course, the V860 Mark III for $230. It has almost the exact same feature set as the V1, just not the round head, and it has that little switch on the side, if you like that. And a lot of people love this built-in super bright LED in the front that is much more closely matched in color. There's the TT685 Mark II for $130. It's about the same amount of power, but recycle time's not as good, don't have the round head, overheats way faster. But that's the Godox side of things. If we expand into other things here, we will find the Westcott FJ82 for $340, approximately the same price as this, with a big beautiful color touchscreen on the back, a little bit more power output, probably overheats just a little bit faster though. There is the newer Z2 for $280, again, modern user interface for less money. If we look at the first party flashes, Sony's new HVL F60RM Mark II for $550. Nikon still has the old SP5000 AF, which is getting a little long in the tooth at this point, for $600. Canon is about to come out with a new EL1 for $1,100. Canon, what are you doing? It's got an old dot screen on the back. That is a wild price, Canon. You better have some crazy features going on here. Photo, of course, always pretty high up in the price range. The new A10 for $1095. Fancier screen on the back. Nice, simple, easy to use user interface. No, it's not the most expensive flash in the world, but it's starting to feel a little bit old-fashioned at this price point, and you can get most of the same functionality for a lot less just from Godox. So I'm going to give this a 7 out of 10 for value. This flash could be worth it to people who want to get the most performance for their dollar, the most bang for your buck when it comes to just getting as many flashes as possible in as little time as possible. This is going to do a great job for you. But it is a tough sell over the original V1 with that much of a price increase, and an even tougher sell over, say, a V860 Mark III. What do you think about the new V1 Pro? Is it worth it? If you want to pick up one of these and support this channel, we have links in the description below. Buy from Adorama or from Strobe Pro, two great companies that will support your flash with warranty and customer service after you buy it. Don't just buy it on Amazon or from AliExpress or something. For me personally, I am still split on this. It is a great refinement, but there are some obvious things that they overlooked on this. Let me know what you think down in the comments below. I would love to talk to you about that, so maybe I can wrap my head around this a little bit further. I'm gonna keep using this and trying it out and putting it through its paces, and we'll come back later on with a long-term review to see how things have lasted. But until next time, let's go take some photos.